What if we consider the intriguing possibility that Queen Elizabeth II, the epitome of decorum and grace, maintained a discreetly curated list of adversaries, not one marked by public scandals or sensationalist drama, but rather a silent roster of 6 individuals who were effectively ostracized from her royal discourse, relegated to the shadows of the palace's imposing walls. Although they exchanged courteous smiles in public, beneath the façade of royal etiquette lay a simmering undercurrent of resentment that the Queen cultivated throughout her reign. This was not a matter of emotional outbursts or indiscriminate wrath. Rather, she chose to systematically erase their presence from her life and court, a testament to the complexities of her character. This evening, we dare to delve into the secrets concealed within the confines of the palace, examining the limitations of a monarch who, despite her training in the art of discretion, grappled with her own boundaries. Join us as we unveil the 6 royals whom Queen Elizabeth held in particularly low esteem. Before we venture further into this exploration of royal animosities, we invite you to subscribe. Our channel is dedicated to peeling back the layers of history, revealing truths often left unspoken. Additionally, we'd love to hear from you. Where are you tuning in from? What time is it as you engage with these tales of intrigue? Whether it is the witching hour in Manchester or the early morning in Manila, let us know who accompanies us on this journey through royal enigma. At the heart of British royal history lies the figure of Wallis Simpson, a woman who did not merely enter the palace. She burst through its doors, overturning centuries of tradition with her very presence. Twice divorced, an American by birth, and brazenly dismissive of the rigid British decorum, Simpson embodied the royal family's greatest fears manifest. For Queen Elizabeth II, who devoted her life to concealing her emotions beneath porcelain veneers, Simpson represented everything she was conditioned to avoid. This tumultuous backdrop provides insight into the 6 decades of frosty detachment that characterized Elizabeth's interactions with her. The saga began in 1936 when Edward VIII fell for Simpson, whose voice, laden with a tarnished charm, and humour were not well received within the hallowed halls of Buckingham Palace. Despite the stern warnings from the government, the church's disapproval, and the family's palpable anxiety, Edward abdicated the throne in the name of love, an act some insiders derided as an emotional outburst masquerading in royal regalia. This pivotal moment irrevocably altered the trajectory of Elizabeth's life. Had Edward retained his crown, Elizabeth would likely have embraced a more mundane existence, affluent yet overshadowed by her responsibilities. Instead, Simpson's arrival catalyzed a reorganization of the royal order, prompting her father, the ailing George VI, to ascend the throne and compelling her mother into a state of constant emotional turmoil. Consequently, a mere 10-year-old Elizabeth was thrust into an unexpected reality. Simpson's transgressions were not easily forgiven. Allegedly, Elizabeth honed the craft of muted retribution, opting for nuanced social exile over overt animosity. When Simpson and Edward, the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, sought re-entry into royal life post-abdication, they were met with a chilling reception, as their presence was acknowledged yet scrupulously ignored, akin to forgotten garments. Simpson was far from contrite, often referring to the royal family as the firm, employing a tone of disdain while mocking their habits and decorum at Parisian gatherings. The whispers of her derision were inevitable in the tightly woven tapestry of royal gossip. With Elizabeth's ascent to the throne in 1952, the rift only deepened. The exiled duo's absence from significant royal ceremonies was notable, their visitation requests routinely thwarted, either misplaced or indefinitely postponed. Any scheduled interactions between Elizabeth and Simpson were meticulously brief and steeped in decorum, with biographers noting that their meetings were timed to a precise 10 minutes. The message was unmistakable. Elizabeth's presence was dictated by duty, not inclination. When Edward passed away in 1972, Elizabeth permitted his burial at Frogmore beside a plot reserved for Simpson, not an act of genuine warmth, but rather a reluctant acknowledgement of obligations. Their encounter at this service was devoid of intimacy. Words were exchanged, whether polite pleasantries or silence remained subject to debate, both scenarios capturing a relationship steeped in frost. Simpson's impact was profound. She not only loved the wrong man but inadvertently unraveled the future Elizabeth envisioned for herself. By challenging the tenets of royal obligation, she rendered the monarchy's stability vulnerable while indirectly casting a shadow on Elizabeth's own personal journey. Wallis Simpson lived to the age of 89, fading from prominence in her later years and ultimately passing in 1986, with the Queen sending a representative to her funeral instead of attending personally. The irony is striking. Once the focal point of a scandalous narrative, in death, Simpson became a mere spectre in Elizabeth's memories, recognized, yet scarcely acknowledged. Yet her legacy endured, as the notion of royal sacrifice in the name of love continued to resonate, echoing through the generations, a spectre that would eventually resurface within the Queen's own lineage. Edward VII, known as the Duke of Windsor, stands as a complex figure in British royal history, emblematic of both personal and institutional turbulence. He was not merely a man who relinquished his throne for love, but a catalyst for profound change that would reverberate across generations. His relationship with Wallis Simpson electrified the monarchy, igniting a scandal that would reshape the royal narrative. For Elizabeth II, Edward's niece, his actions represented the antithesis of the values she was raised to uphold: dedication to duty, the suppression of self-interest, and the commitment to the crown above all else. Widely acknowledged to be heir presumptive, Edward's abrupt abdication in 1936 marked a pivotal moment. In just under a year of reigning, he forsook his responsibilities in favor of a relationship deemed scandalous by contemporary standards. This choice not only underscored the deep fractures within the monarchy but also instigated a multi-decade identity crisis. The abdication thrust Elizabeth's timid father, George VI, into a role that was thrust upon him with little preparation, while simultaneously casting a long shadow over Edward's legacy as the monarch who could not withstand the pressures of his station. As Elizabeth matured, she observed the emotional scars left on her parents, provoking a deep-seated disdain for Edward, absorbed through the lens of family loyalty and betrayal. The Queen Mother's contempt for him further solidified Elizabeth's callous view. Even after Edward retired to a genteel existence in Paris, living with the very woman who had catalyzed his departure, he remained an unresolved dilemma. His title, still adorned with the weight of royal heritage, attracted attention and controversy, particularly due to his continued critiques of the monarchy that he had left. Through interviews and memoirs, he attempted to portray his choice as noble, thereby intensifying Elizabeth's contempt. However, the complexities of Edward's legacy extended beyond mere family dynamics. They intersected with national politics and moral integrity. Allegations regarding his sympathies toward the Nazi regime, including a controversial meeting with Hitler and rumored intentions for a restored rule under German auspices, alarmed political leaders and shaped public perception. His recklessness reinforced Elizabeth's growing apprehensions surrounding his character, initiating her cold but calculated distance from him throughout her reign. Interactions between the Queen and her uncle were marked by formality, trepidation, and a strict adherence to protocol. Visits were minimal and burdened with a sense of duty, devoid of any warmth, reflecting Elizabeth's emotionally restrained demeanor. A notable encounter entailed her visit to him during his final illness in the 1970s. Cordial yet detached, a microcosm of their fractured relationship. His death in 1972 was met with an official farewell marked by duty rather than familial forgiveness. As he was granted burial in royal grounds, his choice of love weighed against royal obligations. In stark contrast to Edward's choices, Elizabeth's reign was characterized by unwavering dedication to institutional hierarchy. Her approach served not only as a response to her uncle's legacy but as a direct articulation of her personal journey. Edward's abdication forced her into a life of duty, reshaping her understanding of queenship during formative years when she should have enjoyed her youth. Thus, beneath Elizabeth's stoic exterior lay a deeper contemplation on the life path reconfigured by her uncle's abdication, a quiet grief for a different destiny that never materialized. The narrative of the monarchy, however, would continue to evolve, introducing new ideological challenges to Elizabeth's reign. Her encounter with a successor, an unexpected figure, would reflect changing dynamics, presenting fresh contrasts that would interrogate her own philosophies as the royal family grappled with both old ghosts and new realities. As the historical tapestry thickens with these royal narratives, it invites ongoing reflection on the legacies of those who either embrace or flee from the burdens of duty. Elizabeth's narrative invites us to critically engage with these intertwined lives, compelling us to consider the weight of choices made, both personal and public, within the chambers of power and influence. In the labyrinth of British politics, few relationships have captured the complexity of power dynamics quite like that of Queen Elizabeth II and Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. On the surface, they appeared a formidable duo, two influential women at the helm of a nation grappling with profound societal shifts. However, in reality, their relationship was characterized by an intricate dissonance, reminiscent of clockwork mechanisms wound in opposing directions, each resolute and unyielding in their beliefs. Margaret Thatcher's ascension to the prime ministership in 1979 marked a historic moment, as she became the first woman to occupy that position. At this juncture, the Queen had been navigating the tides of political change for decades, witnessing prime ministers come and go with the practiced grace of a conductor overseeing a symphony. Yet Thatcher's approach was fundamentally different. She was unapologetic, forthright, and, most unsettling for the Queen, she did not subordinate herself to monarchical decorum. Both women emerged from the crucible of wartime Britain, yet they embodied diverging lessons of resilience. While Elizabeth had acquired the virtues of stability and ceremonial adherence, Thatcher forged a persona steeped in grit and unapologetic self-assertion. This divergence became apparent as early as the first year of Thatcher's premiership, when palace aides began noting an undercurrent of tension during their interactions, moments punctuated by cool silences and conspicuous discomfort at state functions. As Thatcher barreled through meetings with an insistence on policy-first dialogue, Elizabeth preferred a cadence more aligned with personal touch and royal niceties. The chasm in their styles of governance was stark. Thatcher's aggression in cutting through established norms stood in juxtaposition to the Queen's lifelong dedication to nuanced diplomacy. This divide was most pronounced in their respective stances on key international issues, particularly during the 1980s when the Queen's discomfort with Thatcher's refusal to sanction apartheid in South Africa exposed deeper ideological rifts that threatened the cohesion of the Commonwealth. Thatcher's blunt refusal to align with what was seen as a moral imperative bewildered Elizabeth, who valued unity and decorum above all else. Their contrasting social preferences only exacerbated the situation. The Queen revelled in country life, with its pastoral pursuits and emotional restraint, while Thatcher, rooted in a more utilitarian worldview, seemed to deride leisure and was often unprepared for the subtleties of royal retreat. Reports suggest that aides dreaded their mandated meetings, where unspoken tensions crackled beneath a façade of civility. Yet, despite the palpable strain, both women performed their respective roles with a discipline befitting their positions. Public engagements masked their discord. They maintained a veneer of cordiality, smiling at photo ops, raising toasts with diplomatic grace, while inwardly, the Queen's disdain for Thatcher's abrasive leadership style simmered unacknowledged. It was not a disdain based on policy preferences. Rather, It stemmed from a profound disagreement about the essence of leadership and the role of monarchy itself. When Thatcher's tenure concluded in 1990, the Queen's relief was reportedly felt in the quietude of Buckingham Palace. Though she continued to honour tradition by awarding Thatcher her due accolades, the warmth that typically accompanied such acts was conspicuously absent. For Elizabeth, Thatcher's iron resolve, her refusal to bend, represented a fundamental departure from the quiet resilience that characterized her understanding of royal duty. In the end, both women remained bound to their legacies. The Queen, with her enduring capacity for adaptation and continuity, and Thatcher, as the formidable Iron Lady whose brashness ultimately became her undoing. Yet, as history reveals, power often blooms not solely in politics, but within familial structures and dynamics that shape a nation. In the tapestry of British royal history, Lord Louis Mountbatten stands out as a figure of notable complexity, a blend of charisma and controversy. To the public eye, he was a glamorous war hero, a distinguished naval officer, and the revered uncle of Prince Philip. However, within the royal family, particularly in the later years of Queen Elizabeth II's reign, he took on the role of a high-functioning meddler. His charm was undeniable, his accolades many, yet his penchant for proactive involvement often crossed the line into overreach, leading to a gradual distancing from the Queen. Initially, Elizabeth admired Mountbatten, appreciating his role as the last Viceroy of India and his influence in the upbringing of her son, Charles. He affectionately referred to her as Lyot, embodying a familial bond. Yet as time passed, Elizabeth's fondness waned, recognizing that Mountbatten saw the royal family more as pawns on a chessboard than as individuals with agency. This became particularly apparent in his relationship with Charles, whom he believed he was mentoring. While his advice on various matters was cloaked in affection, it often manifested in a paternalism that Elizabeth found troubling, especially when Mountbatten suggested the young prince indulge in fleeting romances before marriage. Moreover, his attempts at matchmaking, bordering on the invasive, included an ill-fated proposal encouraging Charles to consider a union with his own granddaughter, a move that was not only audacious but memorable for its impropriety. For Elizabeth, a monarch who valued dignity and discretion, Mountbatten's manipulations felt deeply unwelcome. His influence extended beyond familial matters. Even as he retired from active duty, he remained vocal in political and military discussions, drawing criticism from the Queen, who increasingly viewed him as a risk to the monarchy's carefully curated reputation. By the late 1970s, the dynamics had shifted irreparably. Though polite and maintaining a semblance of involvement in family events, Elizabeth kept her distance. The relationship had transformed into one of formal civility rather than genuine intimacy. This estrangement, although not overtly acknowledged, was palpable to those close to the royal family. Following his tragic assassination in 1979, the Queen's response was marked by sorrow, yet her eulogy was devoid of the personal warmth typically embodied in her tributes. Mountbatten, despite his intentions, had become emblematic of a type of encroachment that Elizabeth had learned to resist. His belief in his superior understanding of royal matters clashed sharply with her own hard-won wisdom that the monarchy thrives not on manipulation or intervention, but rather on measured restraint. While he remained a fixture within the extended royal family, the Queen deftly maintained the separation between familial ties and the inner circle. Little did both realize that the most potent threat to the monarchy's public image was emerging not from Mountbatten's ambitious machinations but rather from within the House of Windsor itself, manifesting not through letters and speeches, but through the quieter, more insidious channels of personal scandal and intrigue. Before ascending to the role of Queen Consort and before the public's perception evolved through rehabilitative efforts and staged photographic moments at social gatherings, Camilla Parker Bowles existed as a figure shrouded in silence and avoidance for Queen Elizabeth II. In the corridors of power, the Queen's reluctance to speak of Camilla was palpable, akin to the discreet references that might be made regarding a diplomatic faux pas. Camilla was often referred to indirectly as the that woman, or not addressed at all when Elizabeth was particularly displeased, silence becoming a powerful statement in its own right. In the Queen's realm, discretion could be enforced through invisibility, a status that Camilla particularly occupied due to her perceived disruption of the royal order. The affair between Charles and Camilla predated Diana's entrance into their lives. It existed clandestinely, immune to the dictates of royal decorum and resistant to the passage of time. While Charles was expected to wed a figure embodying youth and pristine public image, Camilla's marriage complicated their narrative. The eventual exposure of their relationship escalated from mere speculation to tabloid fodder, leading the Queen to not react with anger, but with a quiet withdrawal. The monarchy, already facing challenges in the tumultuous landscape of the 1990s, marked by scandals and a waning relevance, could not afford the embarrassment of a mistress emerging from obscurity. In a role that demanded a façade of duty and emotional restraint, Elizabeth found herself navigating a public family saga that felt more akin to a sensationalized drama than a dignified institution. Although Charles was her son, Elizabeth maintained her standards. She believed in the significance of appearances and discipline. She perceived the Charles-Camilla affair as an act of recklessness that threatened their collective standing. When reports emerged of her refusal to meet Camilla, it underscored her distaste for the chaos she represented. Invitations went to Charles, while Camilla remained excluded, emphasizing the Queen's desire to manage rather than to accept. Official acknowledgement of their relationship lingered until the early 2000s, epitomized by Elizabeth's conspicuous absence at Charles and Camilla's civil wedding in 2005, attending the subsequent blessing only as a symbolic compromise. Her disapproval stemmed not from moral indignation, but from a deeper concern about royal implications. She saw in Camilla not just a distraction, but a channel of disorder, echoing her memories of Wallis Simpson, another woman who had diverted a future king's path without seeking approval. For Elizabeth, the monarchy was predicated on control, something that Camilla's influence had long undermined. Over time, perception shifted. Public opinion turned in Charles and Camilla's favor as they entered a marriage marked by quiet competence in royal duties. Yet Elizabeth's acceptance evolved slowly and reluctantly, only solidifying when it became politically unavoidable. Ultimately, she adhered to her usual strategy of persistence, adapting to unfolding circumstances. However, the years characterized by formal silences and measured distances left a profound impact. For the Queen, before Camilla earned her place within respectability, she had already committed the gravest offense, disrupting the royal family's intricate workings. Just as the monarchy began to recover, the next challenge emerged, not through scandal but with an approachable demeanor and a contemporary style, marking yet another chapter in Elizabeth's complex legacy. Tony Blair stands out as a particularly fascinating figure in the long line of individuals who vexed Queen Elizabeth II. His unique place in her royal narrative is not defined by confrontational disputes over morality or policy, as one might expect from previous antagonists like Wallis Simpson or Margaret Thatcher, but rather by a profound spiritual dissonance. Blair approached the monarchy not as a venerable institution to be respected, but as a brand in need of revitalization. When he ascended to number 10 in 1997, he embodied a modernity that felt almost irreverent directly to the Queen. Young, charismatic, and decidedly uninterested in traditional niceties, Blair infused his tenure with a rock star aura that would be jarring within the halls of Buckingham Palace. The Queen, who had weathered the reigns of 10 prime ministers, understood instantly that Blair's enthusiasm lacked the deference she was accustomed to. He embraced concepts like Cool Britannia, inviting celebrities into political discourse and aiming to redefine British identity through a contemporary lens. In contrast, Elizabeth had mastered the art of political neutrality, an engagement that allows for dignity but hardly implies disinterest. Blair's exuberance appeared to her as a threat to the solemnity she believed the monarchy exemplified. Following Princess Diana's tragic death, public sentiment was palpable, with crowds gathering in a fervour of mourning. The royal family's adherence to protocol, favouring privacy over immediate public engagement, clashed dramatically with Blair's instinctive grasp of the moment. His characterization of Diana as the people's princess reframed her legacy in a manner that felt both opportunistic and devoid of respect for royal traditions. As Blair endeavoured to inject a modern sensibility into the monarchy, he unwittingly highlighted the very reason such a transformation was implausible. His inclination to weave emotion into political discourse, accompanied by an informal familiarity with matters that he treated as commonplace, rubbed the Queen the wrong way. Further complicating their relationship, his 2010 memoir unveiled private conversations, a breach of the royal code that forbids the summarization or casual quoting of the monarch. For Elizabeth, whose very existence was predicated on an unwavering dedication to timeless restraint, this lack of decorum constituted an unacceptable violation of trust. Blair's charm, while vibrant, lacked an essential respect for the institution. His efforts to modernize the crown ultimately revealed the fragility of public favor and the superficiality of contemporary affection. In moments of crisis, the monarchy's enduring essence, as opposed to the fleeting nature of any political career, asserted its superiority. Thus, as Blair moved on, a bright flame in the broader tapestry of political history, Queen Elizabeth remained steadfast. She endured, embodying a quiet strength that continued to define her reign, observing the transient nature of political stardom with a blend of stoicism and grace. As always, she was, and would remain, a lasting presence in the constitutional memory of Britain.